In another universe, I was a hero, but here I am doomed.
You may have forsaken your past doom, but you cannot escape seeing countless realities and face threats beyond imagination. Yet none were as tragic as seeing a hero fall to darkness.
Welcome back everyone, it's Mr. Crazy. Apparently it is pizza time because it sounds like Tobey Maguire might actually be in Avengers Doomsday based on some recent reveals that are happening this summer with other merchandise and tie-ins that are happening with the movie. Kevin Feige and the Russos seem like they're bringing back all the classic Marvel actors and people from pre-MCU days that they could possibly bring back. Tobey Maguire just happens to be one of the biggest ones. So it makes sense that they would want to bring him back for one of these movies, Avengers Doomsday or Avengers Secret Wars. There had also been a lot of rumors about Tobey Maguire being in Avengers Doomsday. This just seems like it's just another confirmation that that might be possible. So we will break it all down in why people think that he is in the movie now because of the toys. It has long been known in the fandom that if you wanna know what's happening in these movies, all you gotta do is just follow the toys. Always follow the toys. So if you really wanna know what's happening in Avengers Doomsday, whether or not characters are showing up, all you gotta do is just look at the toys. The exact same thing happened when Avengers Endgame came out. This is actually how we learned about the Avengers time traveling in Avengers Endgame. Because they had time travel suits that they were working out for the merchandise, even though they didn't look exactly like they did in the final edit. What wound up happening specifically in that case is that the Avengers time travel suits for a lot of the merchandise were based on early concept art because they had to start making the toys a long time before the Russos settled on the actual suits that they wanted them to wear when they were actually time traveling. But you could see they wound up pretty close to that original concept art, like they're not that different. But if you didn't see the news this morning, reportedly there's a channel named Sammy's Collectible Toy Hauls, which is claiming that as part of the Avengers Doomsday Wave 1 of toys that are going to be revealed at San Diego Comic-Con this summer, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is going to be featured as the Spider-Man of this wave of Avengers Doomsday toys. Because of course they're going to release a Spider-Man toy with all these Avengers Doomsday toys. They want to make all that toy money. If you're not a big toy or a big video game person, typically like all the merchandising money from movies is loads more, like exponentially more money than they make from the actual movies in theaters themselves. Billions with a P. Even if you don't care about collecting toys, toys are still really big money. And there's a lot of money to be made in a giant Avengers movie regardless of whatever the plot might be. Spider-Man himself is also one of the highest earning grossing characters for any studio in the history of comic book movies. And movies just in general. The whole reason why people have been talking about Tobey Maguire in Avengers Doomsday is because a couple years ago when we started to hear about Avengers Doomsday, there were early rumors that they were going to swap him in as the main Spider-Man of Avengers Doomsday, not Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Now you ask, why would they do that? Why would they not put Tom Holland in Avengers Doomsday? Why wasn't he part of Chair Watch, which also seemingly confirmed some of those theories? Like why wouldn't they also put him in Chair Watch because Spider-Man is such a big character? Wouldn't Marvel want their biggest characters in the movie? Why wouldn't they use Spider-Man to help sell that movie? People would have gone crazy if they would have seen a Spider-Man. It wouldn't even matter which Spider-Man. They would have gone crazy seeing a Spider-Man during Chair Watch. Reportedly, there were a couple reasons why they would want Tobey Maguire and not Tom Holland in Avengers Doomsday. The first being, the events of Spider-Man Brand New Day will cause Tom Holland's Spider-Man to be off doing something else, helping another person. Now my early theory is that that's going to be Sadie Sink's new character, because of all the rumors of her playing the new version of Jean Grey, and going to be the MCU version of the character going forward in Marvel Phase 7. After they reboot the X-Men inside of the MCU, with completely new characters, much younger characters, and form a new team around them. Jake Schreier, who made the Thunderbolts movie, is in the middle of working on that new X-Men reboot movie. We won't see that till after Secret Wars in 2028. So it's going to be a while before they reveal which other actors are going to be in that, because they're mostly worried about Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars right now. But if it wasn't clear, all the classic X-Men that are coming back in Avengers Doomsday are not going to be in that new X-Men movie, so Sadie Sink's Jean Grey character isn't meant to be connected to those classic X-Men. She's like a completely different version of the character, which is why people are getting confused, because she's so young and technically Jean Grey would have a relationship with Scott Summers or Wolverine, and both Hugh Jackman and James Marsden's versions of their characters are much older than her, so like the age gap is just too weird. So of course her Jean Grey is not connected to those two different characters on any kind of romantic level or anything like that, not even from the same universe. They will probably flesh that storyline out in her backstory, or at least tease her backstory during Spider-Man Brand New Day, and they'll explain why they would want Jean Grey at all to be introduced in a Spider-Man movie. I think that's super exciting. Yeah. Coincidence? I think not. My assumption is this will have something to do with the events of No Way Home, and the multiple spells and the cracking of the multiverse and the incursions. Whatever happens, you can blame it on Spider-Man and Doctor Strange. It would not be a Spider-Man movie if he were causing a lot of world-ending problems that he has to solve during the film. So let's assume during Avengers Doomsday, he's busy off helping her with some other problem, so he's not available to be with the regular Avengers and new Avengers characters that are all teaming up to stop Doctor Doom. One of the other major reasons why they would even want Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man to be the Spider-Man of Avengers Doomsday is because the movie is rolling so hard on member berries and nostalgia for those classic era of early 2000s actors and characters, which Tobey Maguire is a huge part of. When you think about the dawn of modern comic book films, like the comic book era of the last 20 plus years where they were dominant in culture, really the 2000s X-Men, Blade during the 90s, and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man are the characters that set that off, the movies that set that off. They walked so the MCU could run. And even before Marvel fired Jonathan Majors, and Avengers 5 was gonna still be a version of Kang Dynasty, and a completely different version of Avengers Secret Wars with the Council of Kangs and all of that stuff, there was still talk of using those two Avengers movies to give those classic pre-MCU Marvel characters and actors their own version of an Endgame, like X-Men Endgame but call it Secret Wars. Then Marvel asked Robert Downey Jr. to come back as Doctor Doom and hired the Russos to come back and direct both movies, and they completely rewrote the scripts around Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom and changed a bunch of the plot. But it sounds like the idea that still stuck with them was doing it as a sort of X-Men Endgame for those classic pre-MCU Marvel actors. One big final send-off in a movie form before they completely reboot everything with the new version of the X-Men inside the MCU with completely new actors. And you all remember from Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, they used these giant Avengers movies to pay off huge character moments going back years and years and years. Now they have the opportunity to do that with a lot of pre-MCU characters, paying off things that they wanted to do during the early 2000s but couldn't because of logistical or legal reasons, or just like studios and things just not working out at the time. One of those big payoffs involves Tobey Maguire and the classic X-Men, particularly Hugh Jackman's version of Wolverine. I understand Marvel, they've got Avengers, they've got a lot of big things going on, but at some point I just find it almost impossible that there's not a way to bring